I want to thank you all for joining the At Risk 2021 virtual conference today as we call together, join together to a call for action on ending homelessness for older women. I think you'll agree it's been a really fantastic discussion. I was able to dip in and out of some of those breakout rooms, and I know there's been just some terrific contributions from so many different groups. I think some of it's been confronting. I think some of it's been very frank and very straight ahead from certainly Linda and Penny in our main sessions. So I really do thank everybody for your participation. We are going to get just a bit of a wrap up. For those of you, you're obviously all in different sessions, but we're just going to get a bit of a wrap up from the conveners of various sessions. Jess Hill, firstly, we're going to hear from Jess, who was the convener of the first breakout session. Jess is an investigative reporter whose work on domestic violence has won numerous awards, and she's reporting back from the Older Women, Housing and Family and Domestic Violence breakout session. So Jess, if you can give us a quick wrap up, that would be fabulous.
Yeah, no problem, Karen. Nice to see you. We had an amazing session. I think, starting off with Sue, who has lived experience to share, that we're really seeing women on the back end of this massive period of social inequality. We're seeing those women in the later stage of their lives who suffered under extreme levels of patriarchy and control in the 50s, 60s and 70s. And the results are what we're seeing now. I think Annabelle, Nimat and Jocelyn all working on the ground, all working on from a solutions basis, bringing very similar overarching ideas, which is basically that we need to look at this holistically, and governments need to look at it holistically when in terms of how they structure their funding. So, instead of services having to apply for these siloed little chunks of funding, which actually don't speak to the experience of the people they serve or the way they work, we need government to change the way they think about service provision and the way they fund it. We need nuanced solutions and dignified supports. And a lot of what we've been talking about is these meanwhile solutions. While we're planning for this longer term sort of investment in public housing, affordable housing, what do we do with all the properties that are free now? How do we actually make use of the bricks and mortar that we have now to make sure that women and kids or just older women are accommodated tonight, tomorrow night, not just in years to come.
Brilliant, Jess. We're going to have to leave you there.
Yeah, sorry, that's it. But
sorry about that.
That's the basics of it.
Brilliant. I heard some of that and it really was some fantastic stuff there. Dr. Kate Rayner is the research fellow at the University of Melbourne, and she was convener of the local scales solutions session. Kate, if you can wrap that up, that would be fabulous.
Sure. My 30-second pitch of it is that we had 4 really amazing presentations from Erin, Cheryl, Peter and Rebecca. And it was really nice after this discussion of, the larger scale political processes to focus on some really concrete examples where things are getting done. But I think very similar to what Jess has just said, the resounding story that we're hearing is that we need bipartisan support from the federal government to acknowledge that we can't do little bits and pieces here and there. We need to be committing to large scale funding over consistent long periods of time. We need a national housing strategy. We need a united voice. We need the government to put the money where their mouth is at and fund what is important. And we need the Labor government to change their mind on their tax breaks around capital gains taxes and negative gearing. So focus on social housing being the solution that we need for vulnerable communities.
Thank you so much, Kate. Now, Fiona York, the Executive Officer from Housing for the Aged Action Group, is going to sum up the Influencing Change session. Thank you, Fiona.
Thanks, Karen. We had a fantastic panel with 4 speakers who have all been a part of successful advocacy campaigns to share what they have found worked and didn't work throughout their experience. And the key messages that came from that was that there's a real importance of building partnerships and alliances across the divide. There's a real importance of people with lived experience to tell their stories to decision makers, and don't underestimate the power of your story in influencing change. a real need for a clear message. The public doesn't necessarily need all the detail that sits behind it. You can have your research and you can have all of those things there for meetings with decision makers, but the public just needs one clear message, and sometimes you have to compromise on that. Having high profile people support the campaign is really important to reduce stigma and to raise awareness, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily more important as the grassroots ordinary people having conversations with their families and friends, which can also lead to change. And it's important as well to have a range of things for people to do, from signing petitions, from having conversations, through to picketing Parliament and meeting your MPs. Not everybody has the ability to meet politicians, but there are a range of things to do. And after this, there will be options for people to click on links to petitions as well, I should mention.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the last thing was that it doesn't feel like it's winnable in the beginning, but you get there, and things take a long time, but social change does happen slowly and incrementally, so don't give up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much to the three of you for the great work that you did in convening those sessions, and also to all of the terrific speakers. And I do believe they've been recorded, so you would be able to have a look at those if you were wanting to have a look. So the virtual conference is coming to an end, but we are just at the beginning of the action that we are all going to be taken to ensure housing justice for older women. Let's build on the momentum, not just of the Women's March for Justice earlier this year and the Women's Safety Summit. Let's demand a few things from our federal government. Number one, invest in safe, affordable and appropriate housing for older women who are at risk of homelessness. Number two, invest in services and support for older women so they don't actually get to that crisis point, and address gender inequality and ageism in Australia. And so what can you do to make this happen? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we've got some really practical things that you can be doing. Send a message to your federal representatives, and not just your federal representatives. Send a message to Jane Human, thank her for her contribution today, and give her some very specific asks. I would also suggest getting in touch with Tanya, with Zali and with Larissa, and saying, great to see you today, thanks so much, what about? But also your own federal representatives, your own MPs at every level, really, really important. And we're putting some material in the chat as well for you to take part in. You can also email or write or call your local member. Continue the conversation at Haag's online House on Fire forum. We want to get your feedback also about this event, so you please do take the time to fill out the survey. Donating as well to Housing for the Aged Action Group, it's really important so Haag can continue the terrific work. Elevate the voices of older women. Work together to keep the older women's housing crisis on the political agenda. We've had fantastic response today. We really need to keep this going. So seek a meeting with your MP, do a whole lot of things and keep the conversation going. So I want to thank you all, whether you participated, whether you were speaking or just listening. Please continue the conversation. Thank you all and have a wonderful day.